Hello, everybody. Got another chapter of a ghost book for you. And this is from the South Carolina Ghost from the Coast to the Mountains by Nancy Roberts. This chapter is titled Alice of the Hermitage. Now, I could have sworn I heard that from Kid Behind the Camera's channel. He mentioned something about that with Angry Grandpa. So I said, this will be interesting to read. And I already looked at the pages. There's not that many in here. So here we go. There was an almost sad expression upon the face of the girl we had seen beside the road and stopped to ask directions. "We're looking for All Saints Cemetery," I asked. "It was just down the road, a short distance," the girl answered. "We are looking for the grave I expect all the young people know about," I said, hoping she might volunteer to go with us, I pointed out. She stared back at me fixedly, and I noticed a delicate sort of prettiness about her face, with its small features and the halo of soft hair pulled back from her forehead. "But it will soon be dark out there in the graveyard," she replied. There was the heavy fragrance of gardenias in the air, and I remember noticing, for I dearly loved them. "We have a flashlight, and I'm sure we can find it if you know where Alice's grave is." "I'm sorry, but I really must be on my way," I thought I heard her say as she turned to go. We went on. The cemetery was on our left, less than a half a mile down the road, and we parked beside the wall. The wrought iron gate was unlocked, and we pushed it open and began to shine our flashlight, our first one stone and then another, until we realized that unless someone were there to show us the right marker, we might look far into the night and never find it. My husband and I began to feel foolish. Here were two same middle-aged Midwesterners poking around out here in a South Carolina cemetery at night. We really had no idea where the grave we were looking for could be found. And how could we be sure there had ever been a girl named Alice? We decided to go back to the inn. Each year we had been coming to Litchfield Plantation in October, enjoying the mild golden autumn days and hearing a romantic story about a young girl who had died over a century ago. This trip we had become genuinely interested, and the following afternoon we drove to Murrell's Inlet, escapingly to visit her home, the Hermitage, now the residence of Clark Wilcox and his wife. Beautiful moss-draped cedars fringed the drive that led to the Hermitage, and the house itself stood looking out over an expanse of green lawn dotted with huge live oaks. It sounds like a big property, don't it? But anyway, although there are many antebellum homes more impressive than this one, which was built in 1849. Good Lord, that's an old house. And never meant to be ostentatious. Few have survived the ravages of time any better. Across the front porch were immense white columns over 4 feet around, each hewed from a massive tree. Beneath our feet, the bricks of the steps felt rough and worn. They had been used as ballast to prevent sailing vessels from capsizing at sea, and I couldn't help thinking that these were the same steps Alice's slippered feet had lightheartedly trod so many years before. Hermitage was built by Dr. Allard, that's Allard, Belling Flag. He chose a point of land surrounded on 3 sides by tidal marshes. Its front door has glass sidelights and an overhead glass transom, and halfway to the back door is a second and similar door. The floors are made of 20 feet long heart pine boards. Downstairs are 6 high-ceilinged rooms, the parlor on each side of the half decorated with dowel trim carved by apprentice slaves. Between the 2 bedrooms upstairs is an unusual round window formed of curved spokes swirling out from a central eye. On the left of this window, as we came upstairs, was Alice's bedroom. It probably looks much as it did when she was alive, except that the personal possessions of the young girl are gone. There are a needlework sampler over the door with the name Alice. Spool bed with a white spread and dainty curtains at the windows. It has a quality of simplicity and innocence which might be expected of the room of a 16-year-old girl. Mr. and Mrs. Wilcox shared Alice's story. Alice's last spring must have been a happy one. She was. You can see like a darn infrared. I don't know if you see the outline of the girl right here. She looks like a spook in this picture, but anyway. She was engaged to a young man whom she loved, and it was the year of her debut at Charleston's elaborate spring ball. Those who saw her commented upon her delicate beauty, enhanced no doubt by dancing one waltz after another in the arms of her fiancé. But her happiness had one flaw. She was not able to admit to her parents, and particularly her blonde, headstrong brother, that she was engaged. Young Aloud Flagg, a physician, was very proud of his family. Like many other planters, he would have preferred that his sister marry into the planter society. Unfortunately, she had fallen in love with a young man in the turpentine industry, a mere merchant. I don't see nothing wrong with that. If I was the girl's parents, I would have been all right with that if he truly loved her, not trying to cheat on her or anything. But anyway, this sounds like they had love in the air. Aware of her brother's disapproval, Alice wore the ring on a ribbon about her neck, concealing it beneath her blouse in the presence of her family. A few days after the spring ball, a message arrived at the Hermitage from Alice's school. She was seriously ill. Her mother was in the mountains, for it was the beginning of the dread malaria season of the Low Country. Only her brother was at home managing the farm and visiting patients. When he received word of Alice's illness, he hurriedly equipped a carriage with everything to make her comfortable and set out for Charleston. There were rivers for the horses to ford, and it was a journey of several days. By the time she was able to get her back to the Hermitage, Alice was delirious. She lay tossing upon her bed, too sick to make an effort to conceal the ring. When her brother saw it, he was furious. He angrily snatched it from her neck, took it out of the house, and threw it in the stream. The girl's thin, white fingers that had often grasped the ring for comfort during her illness could find it no more. And although Alice did not seem aware when her brother had removed it, she knew the ring was gone. She begged everyone who came to see her to find it, and during the intervals when she was herself, it was all she talked about. So weak she could scarcely walk up supported. She wandered about the bedroom looking for her most cherished possession. Her brother's got some serious trust issues, I tell you. Her brother saw her deep distress, and although he was unable to accept the idea of the young man she had chosen, he was greatly disturbed lest her exertions worsened the illness. One day he made a special trip to Georgetown to find a ring that resembled the one now lying somewhere at the bottom of the stream. "Here is your ring," he told her, placing his arm around her shoulder, lifting her in bed and clasping her fingers around it. But when Alice saw it, she burst into tears and let the ring fall to the floor. A few days later, her small frame wasted by illness, Alice breathed her last. She was temporarily buried in the yard of the Hermitage until her mother could arrive from the mountains. Later, her body was buried in the cemetery, All Saints Waccamaw Church. Never heard of Waccamaw. Waccamaw. Do you really think Alice ever comes back? I asked Mr. Wilcox. I really don't know. Many report having seen her, said he, and I felt her presence a number of times. Where is Alice's grave located in the cemetery? Beyond the church on the right is a simple marble slab, and upon it is engraved the name Alice. We sat out on the porch of the Hermitage and looked out over the salt marshes while Clark Wilcox spoke on how Alice's death had given the house a sad sort of distinction. People have been seeing the ghost of Alice flag for 100 years. They were seeing it when I was a boy. And what does she do when she appears? Old people in the area will tell you that she searches for her ring. I suppose she won't rest until she finds it. Don't you think she'll ever returns to her bedroom, her in the house? My wife and I often feel her presence there, said Wilcox. When I was growing up, just a boy really, there was an aunt of mine who slept in the room. She was looking in the mirror and brushing her hair. As she did so, she suddenly realized a young girl in a lovely white dress was reflected in the mirror beside her, but when she turned, no one was there. I heard her screams as she came running down the stairs. He went on to say that the young people claim to have conjured up Alice's ghost out of their old cemetery. Yeah, because one, she's mad that not only her brother threw her ring out, and two, she's looking for the ring, and I don't know what happened to her fiancé after that, but anyway. They walked around her grave 13 times backward at midnight, and they said that a young girl who runs around the grave 9 times with her eyes closed will find that her own ring is gone. Yeah, I heard that from Angry Grandpa. He said that if you go around her grave, the ring would just gone. Even man's rings, like their wedding rings. That would be creepy. But anyway, I wonder if their rings would actually be in her grave. Like dig it up with permission and be like, "Oh, there's your ring." But I don't know. That's a mystery. By now, it was late afternoon, and we left so that we might get to the cemetery. I did not realize how long we had spent at the Hermitage, for the time has passed quickly. As we listened to Clark Wilcox, the sun was already low in the sky. As we drove away, we thought of waiting until next day, but our visit to the Hermitage has increased our eagerness. The light before dusk should last long enough for us to find the grave, and I was convinced that somehow I would be drawn to the right location. I have heard people tell of a sort of sixth sense about where someone is buried. In a perfectly strange cemetery, they have been able to walk without hesitation to the grave they were seeking. I was impatient to get there, but as luck would have it, we noticed we were almost out of gas. We stopped, filled the tank, and went on. It would soon be dark, and I was consumed with impatience. If only the girl had been willing to help us the night before, we would have found it. Finally, we were there. I saw a chain on the gate, and for a moment thought it was locked. It opened, and I tried not to think, only to feel Wilcox had said Alice's grave was designated by a flat marker. Soon we would not be able to see. There was a sudden rustling sound, and Ed and I both turned, but it was only a stray cat leaping from a pile of leaves to perch on top of a tombstone. We continued our search. I felt something press against my leg as I stepped over a grave, and I almost screamed. How silly. It was only a cat again. Then among the trees I saw the figure of a girl, and I was sure it was the one we had met upon the road that evening before. She must have wanted to find the marker for herself. There she stood in the same long flowing dress beneath one of the live oaks Her hair hung down in long tendrils like the Spanish moss from the tree above her. Perhaps she had found the grave already. She turned her face and seemed to be looking at us, and I waved a call for a moment. She stared back, but not for long. Before we could reach her, she had disappeared. My toe caught upon the edge of a stone, and I would have fallen had not Ed grasped my arm. We both looked down at a white marble slab. I knelt down and with trembling fingers began to trace the words I could dimly see. Alice. We had found her grave, but most exciting of all, I was sure that the girl I had just seen and the girl I had spoken to beside the road that night before were one and the same. We had seen the spirit of the lovely girl once known as Alice Billing Flagg. I wonder if I shall ever meet her again. Woo! Yeah, that is crazy. I'll get spooked if I see somebody in the cemetery at night and be like, they're not supposed to be here, but then I'm not supposed to be there either. But anyway. Ooh. I don't know why it's giving me chills already. But anyway, like I said, I heard this story. Like, Angry Grandpa did not put a full video about the story. They just talked about it a little bit in Kid Behind the Camera's video called Grandpa's Paranormal Experiences. And he talked about Alice at the Hermitage. And I said, that lady had a rough life with her family. I tell you, they're just too judgmental on who she picked to marry, and then she died from broken heart because she did not see her ring anymore. So that is sad. But anyway, that's going to be it for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more book reading videos like this. And this has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Collection channel. I'm Jeffrey the Tin Man Taylor. Sayonara.